Welcome to our first episode of Troubled, A Return to Haven. This is a Rewatch podcast dedicated to the SyFy Channel show called Haven, based on the Stephen King novella, The Colorado Kid. Show premiered 10 years ago, so I totally thought it was a timely... Oh, God, I'm going to say timely time, aren't I? It's a timely time to release a Rewatch pod, right? So thanks for returning to Haven with us. I'm one of your hosts, Alex French. I'm a writer, filmmaker, do a bunch of stuff, obviously a podcaster. I have a website some would call a blog called creatiscope.com, C-R-E-A-T-I scope. It's like a creative kaleidoscope. It's a terrible name, I know. But you can check out what I write there. It's mostly about comic books and Survivor, the TV show on CBS. But my co-host over here...
Hi, thanks for listening. I'm Rich French. I'm a former Army sergeant and a healthcare manager, but now I'm giving it a go as a podcaster. Obviously, the thing I'm most famously known for is being Alex's dad.
Yeah.
So we wanted to do the Haven Rewatch podcast because, first of all, we think back to when we initially watched it. We liked Sci-Fi Network. We loved Eureka. Eureka was one of our favorite shows we used to watch together. So we decided that we would watch Haven. And then after we getting into Haven, we decided 10 years later, like Alex said, this is a great time to do a rewatch podcast on Haven. Let's see how it stands the test of time. Is it viable today? And
one of my motivations for doing this Haven Rewatch podcast is that I actually didn't finish the last half season, maybe. I might have gotten halfway through season 5, which is double length. It's almost like a 6th season. But I never finished, and I've been thinking about it for years that I wanted to go back, finish it. But I just don't remember enough, so I was thinking about rewatching it. Then we wanted to start a rewatch podcast, father and son rewatch podcast, and we wanted to pick a show that we both know. And we're big Stephen King fans. We read his books. I think you've read a lot more than I have.
Yeah, I've been reading them since I turned 18. I mean, I even turned your mom on to Stephen King. She hadn't even really heard of him before then. And
she'll dispute that, I feel like. I think she said she read The Stand first.
No, she did not. She did not read The Stand first. Her first Stephen King book was The Gunslinger.
Really?
Yes.
Oh, I thought it was The Stand.
That's how your name almost became Roland.
That's horrible.
Aren't you lucky we didn't do that?
I'm very lucky. I'm rereading Gunslinger now. What was the last King book you read?
The last one I remember was the Kennedy assassination book.
Oh, was it like something 63, 11 something 63? They turned into the James Franco show on Hulu, right?
Yeah.
I didn't watch it.
Yeah,
but I heard it was good, and I know you really liked the book.
The book was excellent. He won some national awards for that, and it was well deserved. It's an excellent book. And,
was it? Did you finish the Mercedes trilogy?
Yes, I did.
That was the most recent thing maybe you read?
There's a different one. There's a
revival, maybe.
Yeah, revival. I think that's the last. Okay. The last one
because it's supposed to be like Lovecraftian, right?
Yes, and it's his homage to Lovecraft. Yeah, it's pretty good. And like Lovecraft, it's pretty dark.
Yeah,
soul crushing.
All right, so Haven ran for, like I said, 5 seasons. Even though the 5th season feels like 6 because it's double the amount of episodes that a normal season was. But we started with the pilot. Obviously, we're not going to do some crazy podcast. We're watching them out of order. Not that I've ever ran into one of those, but now I'm just waiting for the day. Hopefully, someone hears this and makes a crazy podcast. So, okay, we watched the pilot. It begins with a generic cityscape. It just shows some random city. We're not told what it is. And we go to Audrey's bedroom. She's awakened by Agent Howard. We're introduced to the character, Audrey Parker. She has no real life. She has not much furniture, just books. And Howard's, there's been a murder. Federal agent's dead. The guy escaped imprisonment, and he's escaped to Maine, and she's got to go chase him, right?
He kills a federal guard in his escape. And I just like to point out during that scene, her alarm goes off, and she's awoken to Love Will Keep Us Together by Captain Tenille from the 70s. And I just want to state 2 things. One, it sucks as much now as it did in the 70s, and a person her age would never have that station on her alarm clock.
Okay, in 2010, did people even have radio alarm clocks anymore? I just use my phone.
So they still exist, and someone what's her character's age supposed to be in there? What would you peg her at?
I would guess like 30.
30. That's it. That's exactly what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
So a 30-year-old in 2010 might still have a alarm clock.
I don't know. Maybe. What did you use? Did you use a radio alarm clock? No, you had a regular alarm clock, right?
It had a radio on it, but yeah.
You didn't use it.
No, I found a $5 alarm clock at Walmart that has the most annoying buzz that it's impossible to oversleep the alarm itself. It is possible to get up and turn it off and go back to bed. And
yeah, it's why you got to keep it across the room. I feel like radio alarm clocks are just things from movies. I feel like people haven't used radio alarm clocks in real life.
It was the co-star of Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
You couldn't make the movie without it.
Exactly. I feel like movies and TV shows popularized radio alarm clocks. I don't know. Obviously, I was born in the early 90s, but in the past, like 25 years, do people still use those really?
Yeah, but now you know what you're getting for your next birthday gift. Yeah.
Oh, yay. Okay, well, how'd you feel about... So she's introduced. She's got to go to Haven, Maine. We're given a little exposition about where she comes from. You know, a blind alley's better than wherever she's from, and that she fucked up some Miami case, but we're not told anything about the Miami case.
And that was frustrating to me. I wanted to know exactly what happened. What rabbit holes was she going down? I mean, what did she do that he really had to reprimand her for? And I would have liked to have known that. She goes with her gut too much, kind of. You know, that's...
Well, one, they were saying, we listened to there's two commentaries on the episode on the Blu-rays. The first one, that's like the producers and the actors, they talk about that scene was shot way later. As, you know, you would shoot all the stuff in Maine and then shoot that stuff in a studio. It looks like a studio to me. And then that's where you shoot the skyline. Right,
Nova Scotia. Not that there's much of a difference between Maine and Nova Scotia, obviously, why they chose to film there.
For Haven, but wherever they're saying Audrey's from, generic big city number one, right?
Yeah, exactly. Could be anywhere.
I think they shot the scene later, so I'm not even sure that this scene initially existed. I want to say they mentioned that it originally started with her arriving in Maine, her driving into Maine, and then we were going to find out information expositionally later.
I think it was the commentary because I think exactly what it was they read it in the casting, but then it wasn't in the pilot, and then they brought it back in. So
right. So I think it was a bit rushed. They kind of threw it in there to give us a bit of Audrey, like, okay, she doesn't have many personal items. She's kind of a cavalier. She kind of has she's got a little rough side. You know, we don't know what happened in Miami or how she grew up, but it's pretty sloppy and pretty rough, I would say. I'm not sure that this is a good beginning. This isn't, to me, a good opening scene to the pilot. Like, what do you think?
I would agree. I think it looks kind of haphazard, like it was thrown together, just tacked on. I think it would have been, probably would have been better starting on the road to Maine.
Me too. Yeah.
And then we get right into the action.
Or the chase scene on the cliff was like, which is our next scene. Let's talk about that. So we transition pretty roughly from Audrey agreeing to go to Maine to this guy. What's the criminal's name?
It's Jonas.
Yeah, Jonas Lester.
Jonas Lester.
So we get this guy, Jonas Lester. He's running in the dark, or we assume it's Jonas Lester. We don't really know. And then somebody's chasing him, and then he's telekinetically gets thrown off the cliff, right?
Yes, that's exactly what happens.
And then we get the big Haven title card appearing out of the clouds.
Well, and Howard introduced Jonas Lester in that intro scene by giving Audrey the file. So we do make an assumption that Jonas Lester is the one running. And it's not an assumption because when they opened the file folder, they had a picture of him. So we knew that was Jonas Lester running with his gun. And then, which is, you're thinking, oh, wait a minute, he's the criminal. Are the cops onto him? And then when he stops and then gets launched out over the cliff, to me, I was like, okay, there's something supernatural going on here.
Yeah. Real quick, did you like Agent Howard? Agent Howard takes one of Audrey's little teen vampire novels. Did you like that little moment?
Yeah, I think that was I think that was pretty cool. It's kind of like you and I. Sometimes you're able to turn me on to some things that I normally maybe I wouldn't read or watch. So I think that's cool. Howard's like, geez, if Audrey will read this, maybe I should give it a try. And
but you're saying you won't watch Gilmore Girls.
Just
kidding.
We'll do a Golden Girls rewatch next.
Oh yeah, you're saying you liked the Haven appearing. So normally in the normal episodes, we get a full title sequence where we get opening credits and it's got a cool theme song and there's a bunch of clips and stuff. But in the pilot, that's kind of gone because sometimes pilots are a little different than the rest of the show, right? So right now they don't have that. It's just the Haven title coming out of the sky. And you were saying you liked it a lot.
I thought it was just really neat. Just comes right out of the clouds and like that. That's a technique. I know it's probably from 10 to 15 years ago. It was really popular. I know you've mentioned some shows like Lost would also have it like that. I just think it's a clever way to introduce a show, and I find it appealing. It might not everybody's cup of tea, but I dig it.
No, it's cool. It's very J.J. Abrams. Like he does stuff like that in Lost, Fringe. Fringe, I felt, had a very like text appearing in the sky randomly. But I liked it. It was just very 2010. Heroes
would have some similar stuff, right? Like with...
I'm trying to think. I don't even remember, to be honest, how Heroes did stuff like that. You're probably right. After that, we get the person thrown off, Haven title. The real kind of beginning of the story, and it does feel like this too, is Audrey driving in, and we're kind of introduced to the town a bit. And there's random kind of cracks in the ground, little fissures, and she goes sliding off the road, right? Crashes.
Funny thing, right before the ground, the fissure opens up, as it's happening, her radio station changes, and Love Will Keep Us Together by Captain and Tenille, still sucking, comes on the radio again. So, is that portend to something in the future? Is that some foreshadowing? You'll have to come back and listen to future episodes to find out.
All right, already shilling for our next episode. Please come back. I think what was also weird was on the radio, just like a little thing, was they were talking about some weird stuff on the radio. I don't know if you caught that. Of Tommy Bolt's 7 missing fingers, only 6 were found, is what the host Ryan Wisely says. So I thought that was a pretty weird little thing. Like, who did 7 of his fingers get cut off, but he got 3 of them still. And then they went looking, but only found, where were they looking from? Was it like in a fishing accident? Did some guy come and chop off his fingers? I feel like that's another story into its all on its own.
Which is funny that's not a Stephen King story, but it sounds like something Stephen King would do. So I give credit to Ernst and Dunn for coming up with that.
Oh yeah, and an important thing to talk about is if you're watching Haven on Netflix, which all seasons are on Netflix, is the music will be a little different. That's why we opted to watch on Blu-ray, but we still kind of try to check out the Netflix episodes to hear that the music has been changed. It's like a licensing thing. It can be costly for Netflix to be streaming licensed music that's used every episode. So what they do is they change it out for generic music that to me always sounds like Christian rock. Particularly, it's pretty bad in Supernatural and Scrubs. They're like 2 shows I noticed it in. Netflix and Hulu both doing.
Oh yeah, Netflix ain't gonna crack out the money for Kansas, and they don't want to hear "Carry On Wayward Son," which is
I saw Kansas at a free concert. All right, in Denver. Weren't you there too?
I don't recall seeing that one because
it was in Civic Center Park. I saw Kansas for free. I feel like Kansas would be the
Taste
one.
of Colorado. You must have saw him. Yeah. Hey, dude, the dude's got an eye patch, man. He's rocking the pirate look.
Oh God, I feel
Ladies dig the pirate look.
I'll trust your word. Okay, so she crashes. Her car's teetering on the edge. She's teetering on the edge. A guy comes. He kind of tries to knock on the window, and she says she's fine, right? Or something, and then he walks away.
Yeah, and he's like, okay, you're fine. And I think he goes to the other side of the car.
She's like typical, like, great, right when I do need him. And then he shows up on the other side and lets her out.
Pretty cool, though. How, as soon as he kind of pulls her out, car goes off the cliff and obviously crashes below. And I know you're very fond of one of the lines in this scene when he pulls his gun out on her because he knows her gun holstered, and then she pulls her gun. And
so they have their guns pulled on each other, and she's like, let me see some ID. And he's like, I'm a cop. He shows her the ID, and then she goes to reach for hers. And he's like, whoa. And she's like, what am I going to do? I'm going to pull out a second gun. I thought that was pretty awesome. It's probably my favorite moment of the pilot, like comedy wise, especially.
Comedy wise, yeah. And it establishes their banter, which is one of the things that makes the show great.
Because how many movies do they do that where they got a gun and they're reaching, they're like, whoa, what are you doing? And it's like, well, what are they going to do? They're going to pull out a bigger gun? Like, I guess if it's like a movie with a nuclear bomb, but short of that, what are they going to do? Pull out a second gun,
This one's got a silencer. Yeah, no, it was asinine, but it was hilarious. That very good writing.
Yeah, so that's us getting introduced to Nathan Warnos. He's a deputy with Haven PD. Do you want to talk about Nathan a little bit? He's pretty... I'll talk about my opinion from him when I first watched it. When I first watched the show, I thought he was very vanilla. I thought he was pretty boring, and I wasn't much a fan of Nathan. But rewatching it now, I don't know if it's because I'm older or I won't say I'm a better writer. I guess that I've written more. Maybe increase in quality is questionable. But now that I've tried writing more and just watching more stuff, and now that I'm a bit older, I actually appreciated Nathan's character a lot more than I did when I was like 17, 18 watching this show.
Yeah, I like Nathan. I liked him. I liked him the first time, but obviously I was considerably older than you. For the record, 20-year difference, and you guys can do the math. How old I was 10 years ago, but I like Nathan a lot. He's a stand-up dude, and he's he's got issues with his dad. By God, I know I had issues with my dad. I like him as a character. I think he doesn't get enough credit for his dry sense of humor and that.
Yeah.
And he cares about the people in the town. He's not my favorite character, Emily. My favorite character is Audrey Parker. I think probably the first time it was Nathan, but this time it's Audrey Parker, but Nathan's my second favorite.
Wow. So yeah, I would probably, so as a kid, I'd probably say Duke was my favorite. And we'll get to Duke here in a minute, just because I thought he was more interesting. Now, I gotta agree, probably his drier sense of humor. I guess maybe it's like a maturity thing that I enjoy his drier sense of humor. I appreciate his sense of responsibility, I guess. And maybe that's boring. Maybe I hope I'm not saying I'm more boring of a person now. I enjoy Nathan's stoic demeanor also. I would just say Nathan's was my favorite of the episode, actually. He was probably he was the most interesting character to me and the most fun.
Yeah, for me, Audrey is my favorite, but Nathan's a close second. And I don't want to get too much into why Audrey's my favorite, because big chunks of that were not up to that point yet, kind of in the arc. So I'll save that for down the road a bit. Yeah,
the mystery is teased very soon here. Okay, so he saves her. They go to investigate, some crime scene stuff. We get a lot of... It's a lot of boring exposition. It's not boring. I'll say this. It's a lot of exposition. She goes to check out the body with Nathan. We're missing one important part. They're getting in the Nathan's really cool Bronco. His truck's pretty cool. They're getting in this cool blue Bronco. He's letting her in, slams the door on his hand, feels nothing. I thought that was so Nathan can't feel, I forgot what they call it. It doesn't really matter. He can't feel pain. He has no sensory, he has no sense of touch, right? He can't feel things. So when they slam the door on his hand, he's doesn't react to the pain, and that'll come back a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge deal, and it will come into play. I believe next week's episode you will be learning a lot more about that.
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty clever way to kind of just do it real fast, to slam his hand, and then we'll kind of talk about, then they talk about it a little later, and it comes into play throughout the episode. I guess the truck, he gets a little hurt throughout the episode, and it proves to not be that big a deal, which leads to the final scene's pretty cool. Nathan being able to shrug off what he does. So they meet the chief. We meet Chief Warnos, which in a cool, shocking reveal, we find out is Nathan's dad, who he doesn't call dad. He just calls him the chief. What do you think of the chief?
First, right on the scene, the crime scene, I was, he was like, oh, it was the typical federal agent versus local cop bullshit that is in every show. Oh, you're going to hamper our investigation and you're just wasting your time. We know what we're doing. It's just, it's a really tired and played out theme. Yeah. I wish they would have handled it differently. Now, back in 2010, I probably thought it was okay. Yeah, and then Warnos, Chief Warnos was probably my least favorite character. And in the beginning, it was Duke the first time, but this time it's probably Chief Warnos because just because I was so tired of that stance. I would love a show finally one time to be like where the local and the FBI are like, yeah, this is great. Let's work together and let's get this taken care of.
I guess Nathan kind of had that opinion. He was like, all right, well, come on. But he's pretty dry. He's not enthusiastic. He's like, all right, let's go investigate.
Well, and he probably, he wanted to piss off his dad.
Yeah, true. He wants to challenge the chief. I like the chief more like comedically, I guess. He feels maybe the most of a king character to me. He feels very... I've never been to Maine, but he feels like how a small town Maine chief of police would be like. I enjoyed the kind of curmudgeon-y attitude, his speech pattern. The rest of them kind of don't do accents or anything, but he really goes for it. Well,
the guy who plays him is supposed to be this legend up in Canada, legendary actor, and that everybody loves and thinks is awesome. So, and he does seem like a king character outside of he doesn't have like a stupid ass name. He's not named Ace or something, which...
Or doesn't have any so far, or I can't remember any off the top of my head, some like dumbass saying. I know in the Colorado Kid book, they were saying vice versa instead of vice versa, and I wanted to rip the book in half.
Well, in the book, he really goes hardcore on doing the Maine accent and even spelling the words and even showing you how they're pronounced, what they sound like when Maine people speak, which makes you think that you need an interpreter to go to the upper East Coast.
All right. After that, they kind of talk. It's a lot of boring exposition. It's Audrey was an orphan. Nathan doesn't have a good relationship with his dad. Haven's a small town lobster. They find a hat up on the cliff. She doesn't think he fell off the cliff. She, of course, thinks he was pushed or something's going on. Because Audrey's pretty intuitive. Almost maybe a little too intuitive, but she's pretty intuitive. And then they go into town. This is all pretty like establishing stuff. You're kind of just seeing the town, the car, meet Nathan. He likes pancakes, hates lobsters.
But I sure do like pancakes.
Yeah, it's a good line. And it's pretty awesome that it keeps coming back to him eating the pancakes is a pretty big deal.
I like pancakes, so I hate lobsters.
I actually had pancake today. I had pancakes today. Just by pure coincidence, they were made. Well,
that is serendipitous.
Yeah, pretty pointless, I guess. Okay, so we go into town. Nathan is, I know who this hat belongs to. I think it's pretty strange that he knows who this hat belongs to. Do you think Nathan has a secret, was it haberdashery? Is that what it's called on the side?
Yeah. He runs his own, in the garage. He does his own haberdashery, making hats. He specializes for men with really big heads that can't find hats at normal stores. So.
Yeah, he recognizes his hat that this guy wears. They go to an antique shop. This guy who has like a personal space issue. Audrey doesn't want to respect it. I thought she was, I guess maybe this is a time difference, but I feel like in 2020, if some guy, was like, hey, I have PTSD from the war, don't come near me. And somebody was kind of getting in their grill, I think in 2020, you would catch people be like, hey, this character's kind of a dick for getting in his face about this. Did you think that or?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking at the time was in this, currently, if, someone says, we think a lot about our veterans and what they have gone through. And this, there's no way you would just rush up on the person. You would need some probable cause before you did that and just went and grabbed them. But Nathan did kind of step in and try to have her keep a little space there.
Which I guess pushes the Audrey's a bit intense. She's a bit aggressive. She doesn't have much tact. Well, she has. She's like good at stuff, but sometimes she's a little tactless. Like she goes into the antique shop, starts talking to Marion and Ted, the couple that run the antique shop, and they're like, "Oh, we're thinking of moving to where was it? Was it Santa Monica?
Santa Monica.
Yeah, they're like, "Hey, we're thinking of moving to Santa Monica." She's like, "Oh yeah, I caught a pedophile and a serial killer there," which is pretty fun. It was a really funny moment.
So it's safe now.
Yeah, it's safe now. But it kind of shows Audrey's lack of tact, right? That she's like, kind of forgets. She doesn't have much of a personal life. So she doesn't recognize they don't want to talk about this stuff. Her
job is her life. So that's really all she has, but that and her teeny vampire romance novel.
Yeah. No furniture whatsoever. I'm sorry, Conrad Brower is the guy outside with the hat, and he's very suspicious. You know how these shows go. Haven's one of those sci-fi monster of the week, case of the week shows. And he's there's a pretty patented formula where they want you to think one person's the problem. And then, you're towards the end of the episode, you're going to find out, oh shit, it's completely someone else completely,
Yeah. They love to do the bait and switch.
Yeah, exactly. And Conrad's our bait.
It's a supernatural police procedural for a lot of it. And, but there is an overarching story that we'll get to.
Right. So they're trying to interview the couple inside. They're going to move. Her and Ted are dating. Conrad's a war vet. The only person he's close to is Mary. And none of that, it's kind of just exposition-y.
Right. But did you notice when Nathan was in there talking with them, kind of the way he looked at Marion? I thought it looked like he was looked longingly for her, towards her. And
maybe that's just Lucas Bryant's that's just his look, I think. He just longs for things.
Primarily pancakes.
Yeah. And the ability, I don't know if he wants the ability to feel right now, considering the things that are going to that happen to him.
And not before the end of the episode, no.
Okay, so the fog attacks, and this part probably, what's funny is in the commentary, they're like, oh, it looks so good. I know from a 2020 perspective, I was like, these special effects look pretty shitty.
Yeah, that's one of the things that hasn't probably aged so well as some of the effects. But you got to remember, we're working on a sci-fi budget in 2010, to be fair to them. I mean, it's not like it's back in the 70s where Doctor Who, where you could see like a cigar case with a tube with a string on it to be supposed to be a rocket, So, I mean, it's a step up. And if they rebooted it today, they could really... do a lot more cool effects.
Oh my God, where do we think Haven ranks on lists of TV shows that need a reboot? I think it's pretty low, pretty close to the end.
Yeah, I'd reboot Eureka before I reboot Haven for sure.
Yeah. I think Eureka's a more unique concept that to be rebooted. And I don't know what Warehouse 13's concept would. They collected supernatural items.
Supernatural artifacts. Yeah, and secret wing of the federal government that had this Warehouse 13 where they stored all of this stuff, and sometimes problems arose and chaos inside the warehouse itself. So it's a good show, and right. I just fell off. I mean, there's so much content out there; it's so hard.
Yeah, it's hard to keep up with everything. Okay, so this killer fog attack comes. Nobody can see what's happening. Audrey, Nathan almost gets run over by a semi-truck, and Audrey has to save him at the last second. Little exciting cliffhanger for the commercial. And then I think the most important part, we meet the doctor or the medic who, I can't remember her name, but she's going to be, she shows up a lot in the show moving forward, but she's kind of a background. She has one line, but I know she's important.
She's very prominent as the show goes on, and so it's just one of the things. It's like a placeholder. She wants Nathan to get an MRI because he hit his shoulder and his head, but Nathan didn't seem to feel a darn thing, and of course he jumped out.
Yeah, he's
an MRI.
He's a bit Terminator-y, hey, let's keep going on the case.
But T2 Terminator, Richard Patrick, not Arnold.
No, not Arnold. And none of the other Terminators, because I think it's safe to say all the other Terminator movies suck, but besides the first two.
Yep.
We'll save that for the Terminator Rewatch podcast. So next we have Dave and Vince, right? That's where we're introduced to the Teagues. And so both you and I read The Colorado Kid for this. So if you're not familiar, Haven is based off of a Stephen King novella called The Colorado Kid. It's for hard case crime. Let me double check that. Hard case crime series of books. And King wrote 2, right? Colorado Kid and Joyland?
Right, and he's got one I think coming out this year.
Oh, really?
I think he's got another hard crime coming out in October or November.
That's pretty cool. I didn't know that. He wrote this one, and they based the pilot off of the novella, but there's really not much. There's almost none connecting. We'll talk more about the book later, but the two most prominent characters are Vince and Dave, right? That from the book, from the novella.
Right. Well, and one of the big things is that in Haven, the TV show, they are brothers.
Right. And in the novella, they're not.
In the novella, they're not brothers, and they're 25 years apart. Vincent is 90, and Dave is 65. And we'll talk about that when we get to the book.
But so as being the two characters from I guess the chief also, right?
Yep.
The chief is in a flashback, is kind of in the story, but not actually, he's not present, but he's like talked about in the story. But he's a lot younger at that point, I think, when they're referencing him in the novella. But these universes don't really connect, but Vince and Dave are the only two real carryover characters from the novella. And I guess Audrey's a bit of a version of Steffi, but once again, we'll get into that.
She's a version of, she's definitely a version of Steffi, because we'll cover Steffi in the book, but the main thing is the Teagues are mentors to her, and we may see them mentor her down the road in Haven. You can already see bits and pieces of it forming in this episode.
Did you like their introduction? Did you like kind of? I thought it was a bit rushed. I don't know.
It was a little goofy because they made them seem kind of bumbling, but they're actually very, very intelligent guys, and but they're fun. They're the guys in the book are fun too.
Yeah, they're really fun characters.
So
I felt a bit like that they wanted to use them in the later scenes at the police station, but needed to introduce them sooner. So it doesn't just seem weird that two newspaper guys like come into the police station and are like, hey, we're here to help you like solve this one thing you need solved. So they just threw them. They had no real convenient place to put them where it's like, fuck it. Just kind of squeeze them in there after the fog attack, and that'll have to do.
Yeah, and then have them bicker with each other like brothers do with their double bicycle, their tandem bicycle. I mean, come on, man.
That's pretty weird.
It is, but yeah, I didn't like the way they did it, but yeah, the reality is that the Teagues are very much a part of the leadership of the town. That'll become more evident as we go through the episodes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Nathan wants to go talk to some reprehensible figure in town down at the docks. And this turns out to be Duke Crocker, who isn't home at the time. Nathan goes back to the state or goes back to talk to Marion or something, and Audrey stays there, gets on a phone call. The hailstorm happens. Something blows up, throws her in the water, and then
transformer blows up. Yeah,
right. And then she wakes up in the boat, undressed, and she comes topside. And it's the next morning. Duke's reading his Chinese newspaper, drinking his coffee. He's got her clothes drying on a clothesline. I should just say, like, what are your thoughts on the scene, or like Duke, maybe in general, whichever one.
Well, the first time I watched it originally back in 2010, I thought he was kind of douchey. I mean, and I watched it in 2020, and he's kind of douchey. But and I'll be honest, I didn't even notice it was a Chinese newspaper either time. But that was pointed out in the commentary, and it would make sense if he's a smuggler that he would know multiple languages and that. But he did save her. And now when we talked about how his age has aged well since 2010, boy, in 2020, a woman wakes up as someone has put her naked in the bed. That might be problematic. So
yeah, I think that's something that like TV shows and movies are still showing as like a bit charming. Like Indiana Jones could do that, right? Like, oh, you fell into whatever, so you're drying your clothes. Like, don't worry about it. Whereas like 2020. You're like, hey, whoa, this girl was unconscious and you took all her clothes. Hey, but the main waters are freezing cold. So medically and everything, get the clothes off her because they're just making her colder. But, you're kind of like, hey, like.
Right. No, I think it's totally reasonable, but I just think at this day, in the current time, some people might be offended by that and think that that's just not cool. But I mean, not to harp too much on that, but it is cool when he gives her the pink little flip phone. I thought that was funny.
Yeah. So Duke gives her a pink razor to replace her broken phone, and that was a nice little touch. I like I said, Duke used to be my favorite. I think his character type was really popular at the time, as like, and maybe it still is. I think Ryan Reynolds still like tries to pull this off, but he's like the kind of snarky douchebag guy that you're like half charmed by, half want to like strangle them. Where you're like, oh, like, but that's supposed to be like cool.
Yeah, Ryan Reynolds. You mean every character he plays?
Yeah, I just watched an episode of Don't, that game show thing him and Adam Scott do. I think it's fucking awful. Like, and I think he kind of narrates it. He's the executive producer and he narrates it and kind of just inserts little Ryan Reynolds jokes every once in a while. Like, just, that only the audience or the viewers can hear. People on the show can't hear it. And I think it's fucking dreadful.
Yeah, no, I do not, because believe it or not, I watch Holy Moly before it because Rob Riggle and Jill Tessitore are freaking hilarious. You got to like Riggle though. He's a
Yeah.
Now I'm going far afield on you.
No problem.
But Duke, yeah, like I said, I like the character more now, but you got to remember at the time, back in 2010, he was
Skyline. Skyline was like in a year or two, right? Like he got to star in an actual movie. I mean, it sucked. I thought, but he got to actually star in a Hollywood movie that like was, not because a lot of TV stars don't make the jump, right? A lot of TV stars aren't considered for Hollywood movies, right? Like all those Arrowverse people on CW, people who are on TNT shows and stuff. TNT actually gets like movie stars, but CW especially and SyFy the stars don't really transition to film. Like they usually stay in TV.
Well, Eric Balfour was, most people knew him before that for 24. He had, recurring role on 24 as Milo. And
that's what I liked him from. I remembered him from 24.
And then he was hot outside of that. He wasn't just in television film work. He was the spokesperson for Valentino Cologne. It was Valentino 5 Cologne. He was the face of it. So he's modeling and everything. So he was hot, and that was probably about as good of a get as they could get for that show, casting wise.
Because he's really the only non-kind of Canadian. The rest of them did a lot of Canadian TV. He's kind of like the main American actor, right? Emily Rose and Lucas Bryant, they do Canadian stuff predominantly, right?
Lucas Bryant does, yeah. He's Canadian. Emily Rose hasn't really done. She still works, and she just doesn't do as much as she used to. He was their main get for their. He was the most probably famous of the cast members, and like I said, the other guy who's most famous is the guy who plays Dave, because he was on Trailer Park Boys, the original Trailer Park Boys, and the second one. Which is just a crazy side note, is that Axl Rose from Guns N' Roses is a huge Trailer Park Boys fan, and he once got the guy who plays Dave to come up on stage while they were rocking. Well, Jesus. They weren't rocking because it's not the original Guns N' Roses. So
we're pretty off track there. Please listen to the next episode. I thought that was a good introduction to Duke. Keep trying to combine introduction and Duke, because he also is, what I wanted to talk about also is I thought this episode did a really good job of, I actually think the best thing it did, this pilot, was show the kind of stark difference between Nathan and Duke, because you may not know if you haven't watched it yet, but if you have, then you'd obviously know that this is kind of the setup of a love triangle, right? Nathan is the more responsible, kind of nice guy, and Duke's the kind of bad boy, right? That you want to get with, but you know that it's probably irresponsible. What was really cool was they kind of did a lot of symbolism, and just not just like beyond like that, not just that stuff, but beyond that, they did a lot of symbolism. Like Nathan is very, stoic. He's very serious. He's very dry. He's very responsible. And to me, that was kind of, he drives like a truck, right? He's very of the earth, and that I'll just say that'll come into play later. He's very of the earth, very like ground-based person, whereas Duke is, he's a bit of a liar, and the truth is more malleable to him, and he's more about flirting, and he's about going with the flow, and he doesn't, he's not like, oh, I need to help people with Haven. It's just kind of, I need to do whatever I need to do to kind of succeed and get by and get what I want. It's very fluid. So I thought they did a good job of, Nathan is kind of earthy rock personality, and Duke is this very water fluid character. So the differences, and then the eternal drama of like who is Audrey Parker going to choose between the two of them, unless you're reading the fanfic where they say forget her and get together, because I've heard that's a thing. I haven't read any yet. Maybe I will for the maybe we'll do a special episode for the podcast of our favorites. Do our favorite Duke Nathan shipping. We'll have to explore that at some other point. But it is. I agree with you. Nathan is earthy. He drives a Bronco. You can always trust someone who drives a Bronco. Well, maybe not everyone. You were too young. You were too young to remember OJ. Oh yeah, that's true. Before you were born, you just missed OJ. You were alive for the riots. I heard I was alive for I heard I watched as a baby. Obviously, I wouldn't remember. The chase scene. The chase reporting. I guess they made it seem like an event. Oh,
It was quite the event. So
okay,
and then back and then Duke is, but it sets it up, and Nathan makes a point that he's been putting up with Duke's bullshit since he was like, what, 5? Did he say 5?
Something like that.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, and that's something that's cool. That's something that brings me back, makes me want to watch future episodes, because what the hell went on between those two that clearly at one time were friends. If you've known him since he was 5, they were friends. What happened? So that sets it up. And then you're also, like I said, they're setting up the love triangle, going all against all odds on it, with Duke being James Woods and Nathan being Bridges. So that's well before your time.
Yeah. So what, they go after the hailstorm, Audrey goes to arrest Conrad. Is that the next thing? And she gets pushed across, like, into the car, I think. She goes to confront Conrad. She goes to, like, arrest him, and they're struggling, and Marion's freaking out, and Audrey gets thrown across, hits the car. She arrests him. Meanwhile, Nathan's arrested Duke, right? And they meet at the police station. They meet at the police station, which you get used to seeing a lot of Duke at the police station. Yeah. And that's when that's all, they're kind of arguing, and, Duke's doing his, like, funny guy thing. But I think the real important next part is, like, the Colorado Kid picture, right? That Dave and Vince kind of show up with. That's the next big thing that goes on there, because she gets settled into what's going to be her temporary workspace in an office she shares with Nathan. Dave and Vincent come in, and they're trying to get dirt on what's going on with the case, because they're the local newspaper. They want the scoop. But that's not the only reason why they're there. They're also there because they want to show her a picture off of their newspaper from 26 years ago, when they introduced the story of the Colorado Kid. There's a picture of someone who looks exactly like Audrey Parker on a beach holding the kid's hand 26 years ago. And that becomes the central mystery of the entire series. Yeah, because I think we forgot to mention earlier that Vince, when he first sees Audrey, he goes like, "Wow, you look really familiar." Yeah, he does. He mentions it. He kind of like raises his eyes up, and then he mentions, and she's like, "No, man, we've never met." I've never been to Maine. Why would I go to Maine? Yeah, we don't learn too much about the photo. We're kind of just introduced to it, and it's kind of just like, well, it's the mystery, but we never really figure out much more. I figure really because the showrunners, what were their names again? Ernst and Dunn. Ernst and Dunn, I think they really just wanted to set up a procedural thing, right? I think they just wanted Monster of the Week and weren't too concerned with a big overall story. They just were like, yeah, throw a mystery in. We'll kind of address it later. What, because they leave, you said after season 3, they're done? Yeah, Ernst and Dunn moved on. I haven't figured out what they all, what reasons why and all of that, but, maybe they're just probably tired of it or whatever, had a better gig going on. So, but it seems after they left, then whoever took over was like dead set on like, we should actually address and answer all this stuff. Because season 4 is when the big stories start ramping up from what I remember. Right. And because, it's basically a supernatural police procedural. And there are things peppered in there over the seasons. And we don't want to go too far down the road with that. But what I like about it is Audrey's, she's dogged. She's determined. Even though now she's got this new mystery upon her, she gets back to her case. She gets right back to her case, solve the case, save the day, and even play matchmaker. Yeah. The Dave and Vince come over, and this is what I was saying before, that their initial introduction was just kind of an excuse to get them to help her there. And they, look up, because Conrad Brower admits to everything. He's like, oh, yeah, I threw him off the cliff, arrest me, send me to jail. But as we all know, there's like 15 minutes left in the episode. We know it's not that easy. And we know the drill by now with these types of shows is, we know something's up. So, and Audrey's got her intuitive feeling, and she's like, this doesn't feel right. So they look up weather patterns. And, she's like, yeah, let's keep looking about Conrad. And Nathan Wright is kind of like, oh, yeah, whatever. I don't know. And the chief is resisting a lot, too. He's like, you're full of shit. This isn't a real case. Yeah. It's, suicide. Yeah. And, that's accurate to police. Yeah, that is accurate. And the thing is, she's doing this with Vincent and Dave, because they logged onto their database and on her laptop, so they could access their headlines,
And that's where they find the connections between Marion and Conrad.
Yeah, exactly. Marion always has these weather patterns that show up wherever she is. And that's how they kind of figure it out. And, they're like, oh, why? We knew not Conrad Brower. So we knew Jonas Lester had a secret partner. And by that point, if you haven't figured it out, it's pretty obvious that her new fiance, he needs her to forward the cash for their new place that he just bought in Santa Monica, is scamming her.
It's pretty obvious. Yeah.
Shows like this introduce like 3 characters, and you're like, okay, one of them's the bad guy. And this guy's dead. This guy's the obvious person. It's not going to be her because she's the victim, so it's got to be this Ted guy.
Yeah. It wouldn't take Scooby and the gang long to figure it out.
No. So you figure out it's Ted. Audrey rushes off to go get him, and Marion's already confronting him because she had called. Audrey had called Marion. She's going to confront him, and it's huge. And Nathan's like, "Where are you gonna go?" And it's clearly the eye of the storm. There's a huge fucking hurricane happening in the middle of Maine.
Yeah, but she's got her duty, and she arrives on the scene. And funny thing, Nathan still wouldn't release Duke.
Yeah, he's still no. Yeah, so Marion's confronting Ted. There's the storm. Ted eventually breaks character and is like, "Fuck you, I'm out of here." And that's when Audrey shows up. And what's cool about this scene is like Audrey does what she's best at, which is talking down the people that are being troubled, as we'll learn in very soon what that means. But people that these mysterious circumstances are happening to, Audrey has a knack for talking them through things. And I thought that was
she has great de-escalation skills.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
And,
even though she's super aggressive with other things, I think she knows when to turn the compassion on to de-escalate, as you said.
Yeah, because Marion's in full X-Men storm mode. Yeah. I mean, she's full on ready to destroy everything around Ted, including Audrey and probably herself. And then Nathan also shows up. Hey, look. And what happens then? Ted gets blown away and finds his gun and tries to shoot Audrey and Marion, and actually no, he just flat out tried to shoot Nathan.
Yeah, Nathan starts chasing him down and he just shoots him, and Nathan can't feel it, so he just keeps fucking like he's the Terminator, just keeps running. So that was cool. It's nice. I'll talk about this. Well, so everything's resolved, and I'll talk about what I was going to say here for the next part. Is everything's resolved, but our last little denouement, the little bow on the package is Audrey's talking to Conrad. Now that he's been proven innocent, and Marion's standing on the beach, and Audrey's like, go talk to her. You're the one that can make her feel better. She can't be having storms happen around her, so you need to like make sure she's okay. And what's nice is Conrad, the nice irony or whatever we want to call it, is that as a person who doesn't want anyone physically close to him to be able to save the day, Conrad has to hold her hand and emotionally let her in, right? That's something he's very averse to.
Right. She wants to grab his hand, and she pulls back. She goes, "I know, watch the perimeter." And then he realizes he's got to be the one to make the move, which was some might say it's cheesy, but we all want we want a happy ending, though.
Yeah.
Kind of one thing that I like about Conrad was so earlier, like when they first were investigating at the cliff site, it was in like a state park. It had this really funky Native American name, Tawuawak. I can't even pronounce it.
I think that it's close to that. I don't know if it's that exactly.
Yeah. So forgive me, I can barely say Giannis's last name, and I won't even do that on the air. But so Nathan tells her it's Native American for welcome to Haven. But then at the end with Conrad tells her what it full mean is Haven for God's orphans. So
I forgot about that part. That was interesting.
So we are going to learn a heck of a lot more about that on future episodes, because it's kind of the key to the show. One of the other keys.
Yeah, I had forgotten about that. So it's nice. The show really, we got a two more scenes we'll talk about, but just real quick, what I like is that it wraps up. It's very neat. Maybe some people don't like that, but I like it. It's nice that we're introduced to Nathan can't feel things, but it comes in handy. It almost gets him killed, but it comes in handy.
Yeah, I mean, it's an episodic show. I mean, they knew they had a full season. They were shooting. So, and a lot of times with weekly television, that's what a lot of viewers really want. They want to see resolution. They're okay with having an overarching story that takes seasons sometimes to resolve. I think people are okay with that. But eventually you got to have some people that want some satisfaction. So at least this one, boom. Yeah, no one really cared about what happened to old Jonas, but you know, but
he's completely forgotten.
The wrong person got caught. You know, Ted got arrested, and Conrad and Marion got together, and everything was happy.
Yeah, and so like our last two scenes are, you know, Audrey gets flowers for Nathan, right? It's flowers because his sense of smell is pretty strong, so he, you know, likes things like that because he can't feel stuff. And she wants to say thank you. It was interesting was in the commentary they talk about how originally that scene had a kiss, and if they hadn't gotten the full, so as we said before, the show got a full season rather than, so the normal procedure is you shoot a pilot and then you submit it in like NBC or CBS or SyFy, whoever will watch the pilot and they'll be like, no thanks, pass. But if they don't, if they're like, you know what, we'll take it, they order the rest of the series, right? So that's why you'll see a lot of the times the first episode is super different from the rest of the show. I'm trying to think. I think Eureka, things look very different in the pilot than they do from the rest of the series. And I think it even has a character who just stops showing. I can't remember the circumstances, but one character just doesn't make it from the pilot to the rest of the series because I think that actor wasn't available. But Haven doesn't really have that problem. Everything looks consistent. That is the police station. That is the town. These are the vehicles. These are the characters you're going to be dealing with. Well,
they had the benefit of knowing they had a full season, so and that's why they would have left the kiss in if they were trying to dig the hook in to get get the funding. But
we got it. They don't have to get our attention because they're not worried about getting the network with because normally it's like you got to squeeze in a romance, but they didn't have to worry about that because they had the full series to order,
which was great. I mean, because now that sets up, like you said, the love triangle angle, which so kind of redundant there, but it sets it up, and they don't have to have one guy off to a fast start.
Yeah.
So I really like that. During that scene, one of the things I really love is Nathan's really skeptical about, because like Marion can control the weather. We don't know that, and then. Audrey says something, I remember the line, when you rule out everything else, you have to accept what's left, which is super cool because that was one of the main things that the Teague brother, they weren't brothers in the book. It's one of the main things they taught the female lead in the Colorado Kid story was that, you have to rule everything out like a journalist does, but you have to accept what's left. And Nathan wasn't willing to. He's like, really? But she was like, yeah, but no. So that's how
to be ironic later.
Yes, very soon we will get to that.
Agent Howard, Audrey calls Agent Howard. It's like, hey, I'm going to stay here. There's other things I need to get done. He calls someone else and says, what does he say? He says she's staying. Maybe she can help you with your troubles.
Right. So right off the bat, I really love that scene. She's actually at the site of the picture of the Colorado Kid.
Right. That's right.
Where the body was found. She's standing there and almost she didn't have holding the boy's arm. I mean, that's really cool. And then, what I really like about it is that she's going to take some vacation time, which Howard's like, sure.
Yeah.
And then we look over and we see Howard is parked not too far away and he can visibly see where she is, and then he makes his call and it says she's staying and she's going to help you with maybe she can help you with your troubles, which is basically the whole premise of the procedure. Like they said, the supernatural procedural every week.
Right. We got to always end with a little mystery just to keep us hooked. It's kind of to move into what we thought about the episode overall. What did you think about the pilot at the time, and what do you think about it now? Like, has this aged well? Because I'm assuming we obviously liked it back in 2010. You watched the whole show. I almost watched all of it. We obviously liked the pilot. But did this age well, like from 2010 to 2020?
I think it has, actually, just because of the characters. There's really not. Yeah, there's a lot of like police procedurals out there, but not with the supernatural in it like this, and this overarching mystery, which it's just everything's pointing towards supernatural. I mean, so I think there's not a lot out there on that. I mean, the problems with it being today is that there's just so much content out there.
Yeah.
You know, since everybody and their mother's uncle has their own streaming service, and there's a lot of content. But I think it would have got. I think it would be made this. The effects would obviously be a lot better. I bet you go to Nova Scotia or in Maine, it still looks that towns like there's a lot of towns that look still like that. There's still people probably driving that Bronco like that there, and the men, they probably dress very similar too. Yeah, now, the women's fashion probably changed in 10 years, but
I thought for starters that the town itself was really charming. I think that's like a big appeal, is like there's something charming about a small town kind of like that. A lot of shows, I don't know if a lot of shows have what SyFy had, where you could get attached to the community, like of the characters and the setting. I like that. And then I guess this leads into my other question, was going to be, if 2020 you hadn't heard of Haven, would you be interested in this show? Like now, if someone, you saw the pilot on Netflix or Amazon or Hulu, would you be like, watching this pilot, would that draw you in? Yeah,
it would draw me in, because so right off the bat, I'm going to watch it. If it's got Stephen King's name on it, I'm going to watch it.
Okay.
I'm going to have some reservations and some trepidation based on a lot of the stuff that they've done of King's work on screen. But I would watch it just for that reason alone. I mean, and then if it was shit, then I would I'd bail after a few episodes. But like you said, it sets up a nice town. Good characters. Yeah, Nathan may seem a little bland, but he's going to get a bit more exciting as time goes by. Duke's your dastardly scoundrel. So it's got good characters. It's got a good mystery. I want to know who's on that picture. Is it her? How is it? That's impossible. Time travel's not real. Or is it an aunt? Is it her mom or something? I want to know what that mystery is, and I want to learn more of what's going on in this town, this haven for God's orphans. I want to know more about that. So I would think the great majority of people who actually took the time and watched the entire episode would watch the second episode. Most people.
Yeah, I think it's a bit by the numbers, and I think in such a competitive time period, I don't know that tons of people would be drawn to Haven naturally, like, or on their own. I think with the promise, the idea is, one, you're right, that Stephen King is a selling point, just the name, right? Just that alone will get, like, my attention, and a lot of people's attention, like, well, maybe I should check this out. Like the End of the Dome TV show, which blows ass.
CBS.
Yes, CBS. But I think it would be really, really hard to, like, I think, catch my attention. The show would also be made completely different. I think Case of the Week, Monster of the Week shows aren't really in fashion anymore. But, I think this is a really good one. It just depends on if you like that style. And I know I read a lot of people on the internet say that they're not as into Case of the Week, Monster of the Week type shows anymore, or that's a negative for them. But I think it works, especially people will get attached to the characters, and I think the town itself is charming enough. You just have to, I don't want to say, you just wait for 3 seasons to be over and it'll get good. It's not that case. It's good now. Don't worry about that. It's good right now. But I think just taking your foot off the gas, or I would say, honestly, like, taking your foot a little off the gas of the big mystery and enjoy the moment a bit with the show, because I think the characters are more enjoyable than I initially thought, than I remember them being, I should say.
Right, and like I said, I think it would get made. It might be made, like you said, differently. Not every network. It probably wouldn't make network TV. I mean, if it was CBS, they would all be in their 70s. Because that's how you can tell when you're getting old. It's by how many CBS shows you watch. You watch more than 4 CBS shows, I guarantee you're over 50. And by the way, I don't.
Now that I'm in my late 20s, I've only got one. No, that's not
Survivor.
true. Now I'm adding Amazing Race and soon Big Brother to the docket. So I guess
Big Brother started
older.
Last night.
I know. I've been seeing the tweets, but I don't really know. I don't know how Big Brother really works, so I don't understand. All I saw was table maze over and over.
That's for another podcast.
Yeah, we'll cover that on the Big Brother podcast.
That there's about a million of, but yeah. I do think, but like I said, I do think it would be made. I think SyFy would do it. FX wouldn't touch something like this. I don't think currently. Oh,
you're right, because from what I've heard is that they are less at the moment. When I heard this was, I think back in April of 2020, was that they weren't interested in doing anything that was supernatural-esque. They were trying to go for more grounded dramas at the time. So especially not now. Maybe if you're listening to this in 2024, 2025, then FX is what FX is looking for might have changed, but right now, definitely not. They would not be interested in Haven.
Yeah, and one of the streaming platforms might have been willing to do it. I mean, Netflix seems that they have a requirement that they must do 50 original shows a year or something like that.
Yeah, something crazy. So yeah, and Netflix does stuff where a company will will go through production and then Netflix will just like kind of purchase or like do the distribution. So some Canadian network or some Canadian production company could make Haven, and I would imagine somebody like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon would pick it up. It's just a matter of if it would.
Yeah, those three will take more risks. Yeah, they'll take more swings than.
They've done a lot of King original stuff, right? Like Netflix has 1922. I know I'm forgetting something else. Hulu did the James Franco Kennedy assassination one. I want to say Amazon had one too.
AMC did Nosferatu, but that's Stephen King's son.
Yeah, that's Joe
Hill.
Well, yeah, I guess the Netflix did Joe Hill's Locke and Key also.
Did they? Oh, I didn't realize that.
All right, that's a wrap on this episode. We do weekly releases, so if you check back in 1 week, there'll be a new episode for you to listen to. We're going to be just moving sequentially through. If you want to reach us by email, you can reach us at troubledrewatchpod@gmail.com. That's troubledrewatchpod@gmail.com. You can find our podcast anywhere you listen to, like Apple Podcasts, Google, Podbean, Stitcher, all those places. You can find all our episodes also on our website at troubledpodcast.com. We have news there, and it'll keep you updated on stuff like our Patreon page. That's where we'll be doing extra episodes, bonus exclusive content for patrons. It's called Troubled with Extra Syrup because of we love our pancakes here in Haven, Maine. So the first extra episode we'll be doing is The Colorado Kid, the novella by Stephen King that Haven is based off of. We're going to be doing just full coverage on that one. It probably won't be quite as long as our normal episodes, but, it's still going to be good, and we'll keep you updated on what's coming every month for those extra episodes. But we want to thank you for listening, and, if you like all that, go check it out. There'll be a bunch of links in the show notes.
We appreciate you listening to us, and we hope you come back and return to Haven with us again. Please be safe, and most importantly, never let your troubles get you down.